guys, Ash here again at Flight Sim Reviews, and today we're going to be looking at the Carenado C337 for FSX and the startup portion of this review. The C337 is of course a twin-engine aircraft, so the startup is not incredibly complex by any stretch of the imagination compared to some of the airliners I've done in the past, but it's just as fun to get started up in a general aviation aircraft. It's a lot easier, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot more painless. So anyways, let's get started, guys. I want to move up to the fuel selectors first. I want to address an issue with these. Carenado has kind of a mixed history of patching their aircraft with problems, and there is a bug that lies within these fuel selectors and cutoffs here. It seems that if the selector is in the yellow or moved or set to the right position, the fuel gauges don't move. You are burning fuel. If you go ahead and check in the FSX fuel payload, you are burning fuel, but it's not reflected on the gauges, so there seems to be a bug there. This can be remedied, in my experience. It seems it will depend on your rig and your setup. The bug seems to affect only some people. If you leave the switches in the takeoff and landing positions to the left and the right on the rear cutoff, the fuel gauges will show proper fuel consumption and levels. So, and of course, it's not simulated in this plane that attitude pitches are going to cut the engines out. So there's no real downside to just leaving the cutoff levers in their takeoff and landing positions, other than it's not correct to the real aircraft. So while it's a bummer to the realists, it's still functional and it's easy to work around. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the overhead light so it's easier for you guys to see what I'm doing. First, I'm going to go ahead and double check that the avionics power switch is off, and it is. I'm going to go ahead and switch on the battery, set the parking brake, which is this slider right here. I'm going to move the mixture levers into the full rich position and the prop feathers into high RPM. I am also at this time going to open up the cowl flaps and switch on the beacon to alert people we're about to start up. At this point, the aircraft is ready to be primed. The engines are ready to be primed, and how you go about that is another finicky thing with this aircraft. I guess we just can't escape these. These are standard auxiliary pumps on a Cessna. There's going to be a high and a low. Usually you prime for start with the high pressure fuel pump. Just so you guys know, if you're unfamiliar with Cessna, they're gravity fed fuel, and then there's also an engine driven pump, and then there's a backup electrical pump in case for whatever reason the engine driven pump fails. And then there's a high and a low. So anyways, that being said, this side is non-functional for the rear engine. Carenado has programmed this in such a way that the high switch on the front engine runs to the front engine, and the low side runs to the rear engine. So that's rather strange. So these are non-functional essentially. They move, but they don't do anything. So I'll go ahead and walk you through this. Of course, we have our fuel flow gauge right here, and we're going to go ahead and watch that. So I'm going to go ahead and prime the front engine. And you just want to advance the throttle until you get to 60 pounds per hour, and then go ahead and bring it back to idle and turn off the auxiliary pump. And at this point, we can just go ahead and turn the key. And what we're going to be looking for, guys, is of course the RPM spike of the engine being started, but more importantly, we want to see oil pressure come up pretty quickly from start. Otherwise, you could starve the engine of oil and ruin it, which is an expensive fix. And of course, you'll begin to see the oil temperature rise as the engine comes up to temp. It'll stay pretty cool because we have the cowl flaps open, but it will come up to temp, and we will want to go ahead and turn on the front generator to back up the battery. And at this point, what we're going to do is, again with the funky auxiliary pump, we're going to use the low side and prime the rear engine. Up to 60, idle, and then we'll turn it off, and we're going to go ahead and start the rear engine. And again, we're showing oil pressure now. And RPM on both engines. Going to go ahead and turn on our alternator. And at this point, guys, we can go ahead and turn on our avionics. And of course, at this point, if this were a real aircraft, you could go ahead and grab your ATIS and call the tower for your departure and where you are on the ramp. One other thing I'd like to point out on this plane that's pretty slick is the fact that they did a nice job that you turn the radios off from the proper knob. There's a lot of flight sim aircraft that just if you turn on the avionics, everything comes on or off. So it's nice that the power switches for the avionics work appropriately. Also, this is Garmin 530, obviously, and it is Reality XP capable if you use that add-on. At this point, we can go ahead and turn on our taxi lights and our nav lights, and of course verify those are all working. You could go ahead and just call the tower for clearance for takeoff, guys. This is pretty much started up and ready to go. There's not much more to see here. Unfortunately, I wish that it didn't have the bugs it does with the starting procedure and the fuel tanks. It's just rather strange. There are workarounds, of course, but it's disappointing to see that it has that bug in it, and Carenado unfortunately doesn't have the best track record of fixing this. So anyways, guys, hey, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Don't like it, give me a thumbs down. Leave me a comment in the comments box what you'd like to see different, maybe. If you like my channel, subscribe. I do it for my subscribers. So anyways, I hope this gave you a good look at the startup portion of this review, and I hope you stay tuned for more flight sim reviews. Thanks again, guys.